The massive ship appeared without warning on a cold December morning in the year 2147. It was larger than anything humans had ever built. Larger than cities. Larger than mountains. It hung in the sky above Earth like a dark metal moon, blocking the sun over half of Asia. People stopped in the streets. Cars crashed into each other as drivers looked up. Children pointed at the sky and asked their parents what it was. Nobody had an answer. For 3 hours, the world held its breath. Then the message came. Every screen on Earth lit up at once. Televisions, phones, computers, digital billboards. All of them showed the same image. A tall creature stood in the center of the screen. It had gray skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and long fingers that ended in sharp points. It wore a uniform covered in golden symbols. "I am Admiral Vorath of the Helix Empire," the creature said. Its voice was deep and calm. "For 10,000 years, our empire has brought peace and order to the galaxy. We have united over 3,000 species under our rule. Today, we offer the same gift to humanity." The Admiral went on to describe what the Empire was offering. Free technology that would solve all of Earth's problems. Medicine that could cure any disease and stop aging completely. Unlimited clean energy. Ships that could travel faster than light. A seat at the table of galactic civilization. "All we ask in return," Vorath said, "is your loyalty. Earth will become part of the Helix Empire. You will follow our laws. You will serve our cause. In exchange, you will never know hunger, sickness, or war again." The transmission ended. The world erupted into chaos. In Seoul, deep inside the underground military command center, Captain Park Tae-ho watched the replay of the message for the 5th time. He was 52 years old, with gray hair at his temples and calm eyes that had seen many difficult situations. He had spent 30 years in the Korean Navy, rising through the ranks through hard work and smart decisions. Now, he sat at a table with the most powerful people on Earth. "They're offering us everything," said one of the American generals. "We'd be fools to refuse. They're offering us a cage with golden bars," Tae-ho replied quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone looked at him. "Think about it," Tae-ho continued. "They say they've united 3,000 species. United? That's a nice word. But what does it really mean? Did those species choose to join? Or were they forced?" Dr. Yoon Hana, a woman in her 40s who had spent her life studying languages and communication, nodded slowly. She had been asked to analyze the alien speech patterns and word choices. "The captain is right," she said. "The Admiral's language is very specific. He talks about bringing peace, not sharing it. He mentions rule, not partnership. These are the words of a conqueror, not a friend." General Baek Sun-woo, a large man with a scarred face, slammed his hand on the table. "So what? Look at that ship. They could destroy us in an hour. What choice do we have?" "We always have a choice," Tae-ho said. "That's what makes us human." The debate went on for 6 hours. Leaders from every nation argued back and forth. Some wanted to accept the offer immediately. Others wanted to fight, even though it was hopeless. Most were simply afraid. Finally, they decided to send a response. And they chose Tae-ho to deliver it. He stood in front of a camera, wearing his simple Navy uniform. No fancy words had been prepared for him. No politicians had written his speech. He simply said what he felt. "To the Helix Empire," Tae-ho began. "We have received your offer. We understand what you are giving, and we understand what you are asking in return." He paused for a moment, thinking about his daughter, his grandchildren, and all the generations of humans who had fought and died for their freedom. "We appreciate the offer," he said. "We decline." Somewhere in orbit, aboard the flagship of the Helix Empire, Admiral Vorath stared at the screen. His 4 eyes blinked slowly, one pair after the other. His second in command, a younger officer named Krell, looked confused. Did the translation fail? Krell asked. Perhaps they did not understand our offer. The translation was perfect, Vorith replied. His voice was very quiet. They understood. They simply said, no, that's impossible. No species has ever refused. Not once in 10,000 years. Sint? 2? No. Vorath turned away from the screen and walked to the observation window. Below him, the blue and green planet turned slowly. Such a small world. Such a young species. They had only been traveling in space for a little over a century. They had no great weapons, no powerful shields, no allies among the stars, and yet they had said no. Contact the homeworld, Vorith ordered. Tell them we have a situation. And send a message to the humans. Tell them we wish to discuss their decision. In person. Back on Earth, Teho's response had spread across the planet. People watched it on their phones, on street corners, in their homes. At first, there was shock, then fear, then, slowly, pride. In Tokyo, an old man who had survived many hard times raised his glass in a quiet toast. In New York, a crowd gathered in Times Square and began to cheer. In small villages and great cities, people looked at each other and saw something they had almost forgotten. Hope. They had spent their whole history being told they were small, weak, and alone in the universe. Now they knew they were not alone. But instead of making them feel smaller, it made them remember who they were. They were humans. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had built pyramids and walked on the moon. They had made terrible mistakes and somehow found ways to fix them. They were messy and complicated and often cruel to each other, but they had never, ever given up. Dr. Yoon Hana found Teho sitting alone in his office after the broadcast. He was staring at a photograph of his family. Do you think we made the right choice? She asked. Teho smiled, though his eyes were sad. I don't know if it was right, but I know it was ours. And sometimes, that's all that matters. Outside, the alien ship still hung in the sky. But somehow, it didn't look quite as terrifying anymore. The first day of contact was over. But the real test was just beginning. 3 days after Earth's refusal, a smaller ship descended from the massive flagship. It landed gently in a field outside Geneva, Switzerland, where the world's leaders had gathered. The ship was silver and smooth, shaped like a teardrop. When its door opened, Ambassador Kellen stepped out. He was different from Admiral Vorath. Where the Admiral was tall and sharp, Kellen was shorter and rounder. His skin was a soft blue color, and he had only 2 eyes, though they were very large and kind-looking. He wore simple robes instead of a military uniform. And he walked slowly, peacefully, with his hands open at his sides. I come in friendship, Kellen said to the crowd of armed soldiers, pointing weapons at him. I have no weapons. I mean no harm. I only wish to talk. Prime Minister Choi Min-ji stepped forward. She was a small woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes. Before becoming the leader of Korea, she had been a lawyer who fought for human rights. She knew how to spot a lie, and she knew how to negotiate. You may come, she said, but know that we will not change our answer easily. Kellen smiled, showing rows of small, flat teeth. I would not expect you to. That is why I am here. To help you understand what you are refusing. The negotiations took place in a large conference room with windows looking out at the snowy mountains. On one side sat Kellen and 3 of his assistants. On the other side sat Min-ji, Captain Teho, Dr. Yoon Hana, General Baek Sun-woo, and representatives from every major nation. Kellen began by showing them what the Empire could offer. He used a small device that projected images into the air. Cities made of crystal that floated in the clouds. Gardens that stretched across entire planets. People of 1,000 different species living together in peace, their faces calm and happy. In 43 civilizations, Kellen said, I have brought the gift of the Empire. Each time, the species I met was afraid at first. They did not understand what we were offering. But once they joined us, their fear turned to gratitude. Their suffering ended. Their conflicts disappeared. They found peace. Minji listened politely. Then she asked a simple question. What happened to their cultures? Their languages? Their traditions? Kellen paused. They evolved. They became part of something greater. That's not an answer, Hana said. I've studied your transmissions. I've looked at the patterns in your language. Every species in your empire speaks the same way, uses the same words, has the same thoughts. That's not unity. That's erasure. Kellen's large eyes blinked slowly. You misunderstand. We do not force anyone to change. We simply show them a better way. Over time, they choose to adopt our ways because our ways are superior. And if they don't choose? Tejo asked. Kellen did not answer. For 2 weeks, the negotiations continued. Each day, Kellen presented a new offer. Each day, the humans refused. The first offer was technology. Kellen showed them engines that could cross the galaxy in days, power sources that would never run out, computers that could solve any problem. The humans discussed it for hours. Then Minji shook her head. If you give us these things, we will not learn how to make them ourselves. We will become dependent on you forever. We prefer to discover them on our own. Even if it takes 1,000 years. The second offer was protection. Kellen explained all the dangers of the universe, asteroids, radiation storms, hostile species that lurked in the dark spaces between stars. He showed them images of planets that had been destroyed because they stood alone. We've faced extinction before, General Bake said. 66 million years ago, an asteroid killed the dinosaurs. 10,000 years ago, our ancestors nearly died out from cold and hunger. 100 years ago, we almost destroyed ourselves with nuclear weapons. We're still here. We'll take our chances. The third offer was the hardest to refuse. Kellen offered them immortality. Your bodies are fragile, he said gently. You live for such a short time. 80, 90 years, if you are lucky. We can change that. We can stop your aging. We can cure every disease. You would never have to watch your children die. You would never have to say goodbye. The room was silent for a long moment. Tejo thought about his wife, who had died 5 years ago from cancer. He thought about how much he would give to see her again, to hold her hand one more time. But it was Hana who spoke first. Death is part of us, she said softly. It's what makes our lives precious. If we lived forever, would we still create art? Would we still fall in love? Would we still fight for what matters? I don't think so. We are beautiful because we are temporary. Like flowers. Like sunsets. Like the first snow of winter. End quote. Kellen looked at her with what might have been sadness. You would choose death over eternal life? We would choose meaning over emptiness. The fourth offer was power. Kellen suggested that humans could become rulers in the Empire. They could govern other worlds, command great fleets, shape the future of the galaxy. We have no desire to rule others, Minji said. We've tried that on our own planet. It never ends well. Every empire we've ever built has eventually fallen, and the fall is always painful. We'd rather be equals than masters. At the end of 2 weeks, Kellen sat alone with Minji in a small room. His large eyes looked tired, and his shoulders sagged. I have never failed before, he said. In 43 civilizations, I have always found a way. But you are different. I don't understand you. Minji smiled. Maybe that's the point. Maybe you've been doing this for so long that you've forgotten what it's like to be truly free. We haven't forgotten, and we never will. Kellen stood up slowly. I will return to the fleet and report my failure. I do not know what will happen next. The Empire does not accept rejection. There will be consequences. We know, Minji said. We're ready. But even as she said those words, she wondered if it was true. Could they really stand against an empire that had conquered 3,000 worlds? Could they survive what was coming? As Kellen's ship rose into the sky, Taeho stood beside Hana and watched it go. He wasn't a bad person, Hana said. He really believed he was helping. That's what makes it dangerous, Taeho replied. The worst things in history were done by people who believed they were doing good. At least a simple enemy knows they're an enemy. A friend who tries to destroy you for your own benefit, that's something else entirely. The silver ship disappeared into the clouds, heading back to the massive fleet that waited in orbit. The humans had won the first battle, the battle of words, but they all knew that the real fight was only just beginning. That night, Minji addressed the world. Her voice was calm and steady. They offered us everything, she said. And we said, no. Not because we are foolish, and not because we do not want these things. We said no because we know who we are. We are humans. We make our own path. We earn our own future. And we will never trade our freedom for comfort, no matter how beautiful the cage. Across the planet, people listened. And in their hearts, they began to prepare for whatever would come next. 1 month after Ambassador Kellen left Earth, the pressure began. It started quietly. Signals from deep space probes went silent. Communication satellites began to fail for no clear reason. Ships that humanity had sent to explore nearby star systems stopped responding. At first, people thought it was just bad luck. Then they realized the truth. The Empire was isolating them. Admiral Vorath sent a brief message to Earth. His tone was no longer patient. It was cold. You have made your choice, he said. Now you will see what that choice costs. No Empire ship will trade with you. No Empire species will speak with you. You are alone in the universe. When you are ready to change your answer, contact us. For the first time, real fear spread across Earth. People had been brave when they said no to the Empire. But bravery is easy when there is no pain. Now, the pain was beginning. Scientists lost contact with research stations on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. Supplies stopped coming from off-world mining operations. The economy, which had grown to depend on space resources, began to shake. Prices rose. Jobs disappeared. The cold reality of isolation set in. Protests erupted in dozens of cities. In Berlin, crowds marched through the streets, demanding that the government accept the Empire's offer. In Mumbai, people held signs that read, "Immortality now, and why should we suffer?" In Buenos Aires, a riot broke out when food prices doubled in a single week. Prime Minister Choi Min-ji watched the reports with a heavy heart. She sat in her office late at night, reading message after message from angry citizens. They're right to be angry, she told Taeho, who had become her closest advisor. We made this decision for them. We told them that freedom was more important than comfort, but they're the ones paying the price. Would you change your mind? Taeho asked. Minji was quiet for a long moment. No, she finally said. But I understand why they might. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Kang Ji-woo was working on something secret. She was young, only 28, with sharp eyes and quick fingers. Before the aliens arrived, she had been one of Korea's best intelligence officers, skilled at breaking codes and finding hidden information. Now she had a new mission. Learning everything she could about the Helix Empire. The Empire used advanced encryption, but they were careless. They had ruled the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten what it was like to have enemies. Their communications were protected, but not perfectly. Ji-woo and her team spent weeks breaking through their systems, piece by piece. What they found changed everything. Late one night, Ji-woo burst into a meeting of the world's leaders. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking as she held up a small data device. You need to see this, she said. She connected the device to the main screen. Images began to appear. At first, they looked like the same pictures Ambassador Kellen had shown. Happy citizens of the Empire, living in beautiful cities. But these images were different. They came with dates. This is the Varex species, Jiwoo explained. They joined the Empire 800 years ago. Look at them in the beginning. The early images showed a vibrant civilization. The Varex had purple skin and 4 arms. They wore colorful clothes, decorated with complex patterns. Their cities were full of art, strange sculptures, floating paintings, buildings that looked like frozen music. Now look at them 500 years later. The images changed. The Varex still existed, but something was different. Their clothes were simpler, less colorful. Their art was gone. Their faces all wore the same calm, empty expression. And now, today, the final images were the most disturbing. The Varex were barely recognizable. They dressed exactly like every other Empire species. They spoke the same language, made the same gestures, had the same thoughts. Their unique culture had completely disappeared. I found the same pattern in every species I studied, Jiwoo said. The Kalori, the Mindax, the Sphere people of Outer Ring 7. All of them had rich, unique cultures when they joined the Empire. And all of them faded away within a few centuries. Not through violence, through comfort. Dr. Shin Unji, a sociologist who had been studying the Empire's social structure, stepped forward to explain. The Empire doesn't destroy cultures by force, she said. That would create resistance. Instead, they make everything easy. They solve every problem. They remove every struggle. And when you remove struggle, you remove the need for creativity, for adaptation, for growth. Species stop changing. They stop creating. They stop being themselves. They become copies. Perfect, peaceful, empty copies. The room was silent. This is what they wanted for us, Taeho said quietly. Not destruction, something worse. Erasure. They wanted us to disappear so slowly that we wouldn't even notice. General Baek Sunwoo, who had always been the first to suggest fighting, looked shaken. I was ready to die in battle against them, he said. But this is a fate worse than death. At least if we died fighting, we would die as ourselves. Prime Minister Minji made a decision. Release this information to the public. Everyone needs to know what the Empire really wants. Within hours, Jiwoo's discovery was broadcast across Earth. News channels played the images of the Varex on endless loops. Scientists analyzed the data. Ordinary people saw, for the first time, what joining the Empire really meant. The protests stopped almost immediately. In Seoul, the same crowds that had demanded surrender just days ago now gathered to show support for their leaders. In New York, people lit candles and made promises to never give up. In Cairo, a grandmother who had lived through many hard times spoke to reporters. I have seen empires come and go, she said. They always offer peace and safety. They always take your soul in exchange. This is nothing new. We know how to survive. We remember who we are. Dr. Shin Unji addressed the United Nations with a simple message. They are not offering us a gift, she said. They are offering us a slow death. A death so comfortable that we would welcome it. A death so gradual that our grandchildren wouldn't even know what they had lost. They want to turn us into echoes of ourselves, quiet, obedient, and empty. And we refuse. In orbit, Admiral Vorath received reports about the changed mood on Earth. He had expected the isolation to break them. Instead, it had made them stronger, curious, he said to his officers. Very curious. They know what awaits them. And still, they refuse. I have never seen anything like it. Perhaps they are simply foolish, one officer suggested. Perhaps, Vorath agreed. Or perhaps they know something we have forgotten, He looked down at the small blue planet, still spinning peacefully in the darkness of space. Such a young species. Such a strange species. They fought with each other constantly, killed each other over small differences, made the same mistakes over and over again. And yet, somehow, they were still free, still alive, still themselves. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Vorath felt something he had never felt before. He felt uncertain. On Earth, humanity had survived the first two tests, the temptation of gifts and the pain of isolation. They had learned the truth about their enemy and had not looked away. But everyone knew that the Empire would not give up. Something worse was coming. They just didn't know what. Tejo stood on the roof of the command center, watching the alien flagship shine in the night sky. Hana joined him, holding 2 cups of hot tea. "Are we going to survive this?" she asked. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know one thing. Whatever happens next, we'll face it as ourselves. And that's the only thing that really matters." One. They stood together in silence. 2 small humans looking up at the stars, waiting for whatever would come next. Admiral Vorath had been patient. He had waited for diplomacy to work. He had waited for isolation to break the humans. Neither had succeeded. Now, it was time for the final test. "Bring the Dominion's edge into the atmosphere," he ordered. "Position it over their largest ocean. Let them see what they are facing." Emini. The Dominion's edge was not the flagship. It was just one cruiser among thousands in the Empire's fleet. But to humans, it might as well have been a god. The ship descended slowly through Earth's clouds on a Tuesday morning. People in Japan saw it first. A shadow that blocked out the sun, growing larger and larger, until it filled the entire sky. The ship was 15 kilometers long, 3 kilometers wide, and covered in weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. It stopped above the Pacific Ocean, hovering silently between Korea and Japan. Its shadow fell across millions of people. The message was clear. This is what you are facing. This is what you cannot defeat. Emergency alerts screamed across every phone and television. Governments activated their emergency plans. Families said goodbye to each other, not knowing if they would see another sunrise. Commander Ahn Seo-jun of the Korean Space Defense Corps received his orders within minutes. He was 40 years old, a former fighter pilot who had transitioned to space defense when humanity began expanding beyond Earth. He had never expected to face an enemy like this. "Scramble everything we have," he ordered. "Every aircraft, every ship, every missile. I want a complete perimeter around that cruiser." His second in command, a young woman named Lieutenant Park Yuna, looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, our weapons can't even scratch that thing." "What's the point?" "The point," Seo-jun said firmly, "is that we don't hide, we don't run, we stand up and we face them. Even if we can't win, we show them who we are." Within hours, every military force on Earth had mobilized. Fighter jets from dozens of countries circled the massive alien ship like flies around a mountain. Warships from Korea, Japan, China, and America formed a ring in the ocean below. Missile batteries locked their targets on the cruiser's hull. It was, by any reasonable measure, completely hopeless. One alien cruiser could destroy all of them in seconds. The entire combined military of Earth was nothing more than an annoyance to the Helix Empire. But the humans did not care. On board the Dominion's edge, the crew watched the human response with confusion. The ship's captain, a Varex named Terrell, had served the Empire for 300 years. He had seen hundreds of species submit to imperial power. He had never seen anything like this. "They are surrounding us," Terrell reported to Admiral Vorath. "Thousands of primitive craft. They cannot possibly hurt us. But they keep coming." Quote, "Let them come," Vorath replied. "Let them see how powerless they are. Then they will understand." But as the hours passed, something strange began to happen. on the ground below. In the coastal cities of Korea and Japan, people gathered, not in fear, but in defiance. They came to the beaches, to the rooftops, to the hills, with clear views of the ocean. They stood together and looked up at the massive ship that had come to frighten them. Go Nayeon was a schoolteacher in Busan. She was 35 years old, unmarried, and had always been an ordinary person. She had never done anything remarkable in her life, but on that day, she did something that would be remembered for centuries. She walked to the beach with a hand-painted sign. The words on it were simple: "We would rather die free than live as echoes." A photographer from a news agency saw her and took her picture. Within minutes, that image spread across the planet. Within hours, it had been transmitted to every ship in the alien fleet. Others followed her example. In Japan, an old man set up a small table on his rooftop and began to play chess with his grandson, ignoring the ship above them. In Taiwan, a group of musicians brought their instruments to the coast and played music as the shadow fell across them. In the Philippines, families had picnics on the beach, eating and laughing as if it were any normal day. The message was the same everywhere. We are not afraid. Or rather, we are afraid, but we will not let that fear control us. We will live our lives on our terms, even under the shadow of death. On board the Dominion's Edge, the crew watched these images in growing disbelief. Many of them were from species that had been conquered long ago. They had forgotten what freedom looked like. They had forgotten what courage meant. A young crew member from the Kalori species stared at the screen, watching a human child play with a ball on a beach directly below them. Tears formed in his large eyes. Tears he did not understand. "Why aren't they running?" he whispered. "Why aren't they afraid?" Captain Terrell had no answer. He had been part of the Empire for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to choose. His ancestors had once been proud and free. Now, he served. He obeyed. He had never questioned it before, but watching these tiny humans stand against impossible power, something stirred inside him. Something he had thought was dead. Admiral Vorath watched the situation from his flagship with growing unease. The test was supposed to break the humans. It was supposed to show them how small they were, how hopeless their resistance was. Instead, it was having the opposite effect. "The crew of the Dominion's Edge is becoming unstable," one of his officers reported. "There are whispers, questions. Some of them are watching the human broadcasts and they are moved. Sense and support." End quote. Actively, one of his officers reported. Also AG, one of his officers, reported. "Moved?" Vorath frowned. "By what?" "By their courage, Admiral. Some of the crew members say they have never seen anything like it. They say the humans remind them of old stories. Stories from before the Empire." Vorath felt a chill run down his spine. Those stories were forbidden. They spoke of a time when species were independent, when they chose their own paths, when they lived and died on their own terms. The Empire had worked hard to erase those stories, but somehow they had survived in the hearts of the conquered, and now the humans were awakening them. "Withdraw the Dominion's Edge," Vorath ordered abruptly. His officers stared at him in shock. "Withdraw, Admiral? But we haven't fired a single shot. The humans haven't surrendered, and they won't," Vorath said quietly. "I see that now. If we destroy them, they die as heroes. If we let them live, they inspire others. Either way, they win. We cannot defeat this enemy with weapons." The Dominion's Edge rose slowly back through the clouds and returned to orbit. On the beaches below, the humans watched it go. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, a cheer began to rise. It spread from person to person, city to city, country to country, until the whole world was celebrating. They had not won, Not really. The Empire was still there, watching, waiting. But they had passed a test that no other species had ever passed. They had faced absolute power and had not broken. In her classroom the next day, Go Nayeon found flowers on her desk and notes from her students. They called her a hero. She didn't feel like one. She had just done what felt right. But sometimes, that's all a hero is, an ordinary person who decides to stand up when everyone else is sitting down. That night, Taeho and Hana watched the stars from the command center roof again. The alien fleet was still there, but it seemed smaller somehow, less frightening. They're not gods, Hana said. They're just people, different, powerful, ancient, but still people. And people can be wrong. Taeho nodded. Today we showed them something they had forgotten. We showed them what it looks like to be truly free. And I think some of them remembered. What happens now? Taeho smiled. Now we wait. And we hope that the seeds we planted today grow into something bigger than we could ever imagine. Far away, in the darkness between stars, those seeds were already beginning to sprout. The image of Go Nayeon standing on Busan Beach traveled farther than anyone could have imagined. It was copied and shared across Empire communication networks. It was whispered about in workers' quarters on mining planets. It was drawn on walls in secret places where overseers could not see. Within weeks, the first uprising began. On a small world called Varix 7, a group of factory workers refused to report for their shift. When security forces came to force them back to work, they found thousands of workers standing together, holding signs painted with pictures of a small blue planet. "We remember who we are," their leader said. "We remember what freedom means." The Empire crushed the uprising quickly. But another one started on a different world before the first was finished. Then another. Then another. Admiral Vorath sent emergency reports to the Helix Council, the ruling body of the Empire. "The situation is spreading," he warned. "The humans have done something we did not expect. They have given the conquered species something to believe in. Also, one. Also. One. Also." The council convened immediately. For the first time in 3,000 years, they faced a problem they did not know how to solve. Emperor Talax himself demanded a full report. He was ancient, even by Empire standards over 10,000 years old, kept alive by machines and genetic modifications. He had ruled the Empire for most of its existence. He had seen countless species rise and fall. But he had never seen anything like this. "Show me these humans," he commanded. His advisors showed him everything. Taeho's first refusal, the failed negotiations with Ambassador Kellen, the standoff with the Dominion's edge, the images of humans laughing and playing under the shadow of doom. Talax watched in silence for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was very quiet. "They are not stronger than us. They are not smarter than us. They have no special weapons, no hidden powers, and yet they have done more damage to the Empire in 3 months than any enemy has done in 10,000 years. How?" "They believe in something, Your Majesty," one advisor said carefully. "Something we do not have, something we may have lost." "And what is that?" The advisor hesitated. "Freedom, Your Majesty. They believe they have the right to choose their own path, and that belief is spreading to our subjects." Talax stood up from his throne, something he rarely did. "Prepare my ship. I will speak with these humans myself." The announcement that Emperor Talax was coming to Earth sent shockwaves through the galaxy. No emperor had ever traveled to a world that was not part of the Empire. It was unthinkable. It was unprecedented. It was exactly the kind of thing that made other species pay attention. On Earth, leaders debated how to respond. Some wanted to refuse the meeting. Others wanted to prepare a massive welcome. In the end, they decided to simply be themselves. Captain Park Taeho, now promoted to admiral after his role in Earth's resistance, was chosen to meet the Emperor. He waited in a simple conference room on a space station in Earth's orbit. No fancy decorations, no impressive displays. Just a table, some chairs, and a window looking out at the stars. When Talax entered, Tejo was surprised. The Emperor was smaller than he expected, and older. His skin was gray and thin, stretched over ancient bones. His eyes were the only part of him that seemed alive, bright, and sharp, taking in everything. "You are the one who started this," Talax said, sitting across from Tejo. "You said the first no. I was just the voice," Tejo replied. "The decision belonged to all of us. Yes, that is what confuses me." Talax leaned forward. "In the Empire, important decisions are made by those with knowledge and power. The masses follow because they trust their leaders. But you let everyone choose, including those who might choose badly." "That's right. And you do not fear what they might choose?" Tejo thought for a moment. "Of course we do. We have made terrible choices in our history. We have chosen war and hate and cruelty many times. But we have also chosen love and courage and kindness. The choice is ours. The good and the bad both belong to us. And that matters more than always being right." Talax was silent for a long time. "I have lived for 10,000 years, he finally said. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have seen species destroy themselves with war and greed. I built the Helix Empire to prevent that. I gave them peace. I gave them safety. I gave them everything they needed. Except the one thing that matters most," Tejo said gently. "What is that? The right to fail, the right to struggle, the right to be wrong and learn from it. You gave them comfort, but you took away their growth. And growth is what makes life worth living." Talax stared at the old human soldier with something like recognition. "You sound like my people did. Long ago. Before the Empire. Before we decided that safety was more important than freedom. What happened to them? Your people? Before the Empire? They were wild," Talax said. "Chaotic. They fought constantly. Created constantly. Loved and hated. With equal intensity. They built beautiful things. And destroyed them. They were alive in a way we have not been for a very long time." He looked out the window at the stars. "I thought I was saving them when I created the Empire. I thought order was better than chaos. Peace was better than conflict. But looking at you, looking at what your refusal has awakened in my subjects, I wonder if I was wrong." "It's not too late to change," Tejo said. "Perhaps, perhaps not. I am very old, Admiral. Change does not come easily to the old." Talax stood up to leave, then paused at the door. "You have won something today. Even if you do not know it. The Empire will not fall overnight, but it will never be the same. Your small blue world has reminded us of something we forgot, and that cannot be undone." He left without another word. In the months that followed, the galaxy shifted. The uprisings continued. Too many for the Empire to crush. Species began demanding the right to govern themselves. Trade routes reopened as independent merchants defied the blockade. Slowly, carefully, cracks appeared in the structure that had held for 10,000 years. Earth became a symbol. Travelers came from distant stars to see the planet that had said no. Artists created works inspired by human courage. Stories spread of the teacher on the beach, the musicians in the shadow, the families who chose to live their lives even under the threat of death. On the first anniversary of contact, Prime Minister Choi Min-ji addressed the world one final time before retiring. "We did not defeat the Empire," she said. "We did not need to. We simply reminded the galaxy that another way was possible. That freedom is not just a word, but a way of living. That the right to choose your own path, even if that path leads to failure, is the most precious thing any being can have." She smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "We were told we were small. We were told we were young. We were told we should be afraid. And maybe we should have been. But instead, We chose to stand. And in standing, we showed the universe what it had forgotten. Tejo watched the speech from his home, surrounded by his family. His grandchildren played on the floor, unaware of the history their grandfather had helped make. To them, he was just an old man who told good stories and gave the best hugs. That was enough for him. Dr. Yunhana called him that evening. She had been appointed Earth's first ambassador to the newly forming Galactic Council, a group of species that were learning, slowly, how to work together without an empire telling them what to do. Busy day? She asked. Peaceful day, he replied. You know, historians are already writing books about what happened. They're calling it the most important moment in galactic history. All because of one word. Node. Tejo laughed softly. It was a good word. The best word, Hana agreed. And we said it first. That night, Tejo walked outside and looked up at the stars. The Helix Empire's ships were gone now, withdrawn to deal with the changes sweeping through their territory. The sky belonged to Earth again. Somewhere out there, 3,000 species were waking up. They were remembering what it felt like to choose. They were learning, for the first time in thousands of years, how to be themselves again. And it had all started with a single word, spoken by a small species on a tiny blue world, against an empire that had never been refused. No, such a small word, such a simple word. But in that word was contained everything that made life worth living. The courage to resist, the dignity of choice, and the eternal human belief that freedom, however dangerous, is always worth the cost. The stars twinkled in the darkness, and somewhere out there, the galaxy was changing, all because humanity had dared to say no.